Tammy, your formal job title is Head of Resources here at 5x5. But we like to think of you as our number one problem solver when it comes to all things technical. So Tammy and I sat down a few days ago, put together some bits and pieces today, and really it's aimed at giving the business owner a good guide in terms of the boxes they need to be ticking when it comes to running your WordPress website, keeping it secure, keeping it safe. What are some of the technical components that we need to cover off on? So Tammy, welcome. How you going?
Thanks, John. Thanks for inviting me to join you today. And I'm super excited to go through all the security stuff and sort of get our friends out there on top of everything that we need to know about security.
Love it. And in true John fashion, it was rather last minute. I did put you on the spot. But I feel like they're the best chats where we can say, hey, let's get together and have a chat. So thanks to everyone for joining us. So the plan for today, we're going to keep it short and punchy, 15, 20 minutes. And we're going to cover off on what constitutes a world-class WordPress hosting solution. We look after a few hundred different websites on behalf of our clients. And as part of that, manage their DNSs. I'm not going to get too bogged down in the technical detail, but just show you some really cool tools that you can employ just to make sure that your site is as safe as it can be. That will cover off on SSL certificates, what constitutes good housekeeping as a good, responsible WordPress website owner, and passwords. So we're going to get into it. So WordPress hosting. When we say the word hosting, we're going to start at the start, start at the very basics. Hosting is like your bit of real estate on the internet, and that is where your website lives. It is all the files, the scripts, the images, the database, all that sort of stuff. That is the environment that lives in, and we want to make sure that you have a world-class hosting solution. There are many different ways to be right in this world, and this is just one of those ways. But for the last 7 or 8 years, we have partnered with this cool company, WP Engine. We partnered with them when they were just a startup out of Austin, Texas. And essentially, they take away all the annoying heavy lifting of running a WordPress website. So Tammy, do you want to just give us a quick run through as to how WP Engine makes our lives a whole bunch easier? So
WP Engine is a fully managed WordPress and specific WordPress hosted solution that does all the heavy lifting when it comes to speed, security, reliability. So with regards to speed, it just makes sure that when we set up a site, it is fast straight up from the start. You don't have to do anything. Moving to WP Engine, it just automatically makes a good positive impact in your speed. With regards to security, so they have automated WordPress core and plugin updates along with PHP updates. Yeah. So everyone knows making sure that your, or everyone should know that making sure your WordPress core and plugins are up to date is one of the key things to running a good website. They also do daily backups for peace of mind, making sure that your site always has a failsafe to revert back to, and then having the option to do an ad hoc backup when required as well. And then from a development perspective, it's just making sure that we can test plugins without affecting your live site, and then monitoring site performance as well.
I'm going to run through a little bit of a demo of the WP Engine interface. Just going back to like automated updates, right? So we've got WordPress. WordPress is a content management system that allows us to get into the back end and make changes and updates and all that sort of stuff, right? It's open source, which basically means that it is free to use. It is free to shape and mold. That is a positive, but it's also a negative, right? Its strength is also a weakness in the fact that because it's open source and can be reverse engineered, and that's where potential security vulnerabilities are unearthed and all that sort of stuff. So there's constant iterations of the WordPress core and also the plugins, the things that bolt into that to give you functionality in your website. So it is critical that that stuff is kept up to date at all times, and WP Engine essentially just make that whole bunch easier. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you what the admin panel actually looks like. So we just spun up like just a dummy test site. And essentially, this is what the admin panel looks like. So you can see here, like we're running the most recent version of WordPress. It's all fully automated in terms of, and you can turn this off, right? If you want a more controlled approach to staggering updates, you want to test all that sort of stuff, it's fully configurable through being able to defer these auto updates. You can see we're running the most recent version of PHP as well. So that's a big thing from a security perspective, and they're always on the forefront. The moment there is a stable version of PHP, and there's usually speed efficiency gains with that as well, they'll deploy that into the environment. Now, if we look at, we were talking about backups, right? Think of this as like a time capsule where automatically, and I literally only spun this up 4 hours ago, but there'd be like, if this website had been active for, a couple of months or whatever, you'd see daily backup, right, in this list. And that is by default automated. What I can do is I can go and create a new backup where I can basically create a production backup. It kicks that process off, and that is a snapshot in time of your website. Okay, so it makes sense to do these backups if you're going to go and deploy some new plugins, or you're going to do some significant content updates. This is the safety net, and this has saved us a lot of times, hasn't it, Tammy, in terms of being able to roll back? Yeah,
definitely.
Cool. So to roll back, like it'd be selecting the option, and you go restore, right? And then it says, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to restore to the production environment. We're going to restore the database, yes or no. So this is really, really helpful in terms of being able to just have that safety net. Now, if someone is coming across to the environment as well, there's this other cool tool called the site migration tool, which basically automates this. So you've already got an existing WordPress website, and maybe it's with maybe like one of those lower cost providers with something like crazy in their name or something like that, and you're fed up with the speed, it's too slow, it goes down for days at a time, all these sort of just inconsistencies. And like our view on this is you totally get what you pay for from a hosting perspective. And if your website is critical, then you need to make sure that you've got some good infrastructure in place. So what you do, you download the plugin, you'd install it into your current website in the current hosting environment, wherever you are. And then what you would do is configure these details to then be able just to automatically push this thing across. So it pushes it across to the WP Engine environment. It literally takes, depending on the size of the site, it's super quick and punchy, 15, 20 minutes, your site's across and happy days. So that's a really just good, seamless way of being able to get the site across. And the other cool thing is I didn't give myself the ability to do this stuff, but you've got staging and development environments where if you're, say you've got you're doing some enhancements to your website, what you can do, you can push your production website to a staging environment, and you can go and do the significant development updates. You can test it in the staging environment. You can get buy-in from all the stakeholders, all that sort of stuff. And then one click, push that back across the top of production. So it's just a really good staggered way of being able to control either content updates or development cycles from a WordPress perspective. Would you add anything else into this, Tammy?
Yeah, just from a usability perspective, it's super user-friendly, very self-explanatory compared to other hosting platforms. So from that perspective, it's really, really good and easy to navigate.
If anyone is interested in giving this a spin, we just happen to be Australia's largest partner of WP Engine. Tammy's going to put a link up in the chat. And essentially that will give you a brain snapping trial. I think it's about 20% off from a WP Engine perspective. We choose to partner with them to look after a couple hundred sites from an infrastructure perspective. So we trust them implicitly, and they are constantly iterating and evolving as WordPress just continues to gain popularity, momentum. It takes up about 40% of all websites out there on the internet. So as the platform evolves, so do they. We're going to shift gears here, Tammy. We're going to talk DNSs. So DNS, it's an acronym for a domain name system. And we look at all the different threats out there, and I'm sure everyone has probably heard about a site getting hacked, or there's some maybe malicious links that have been injected into a site. And usually they're bots that are poking and probing continuously out there, and they'll typically target the WordPress websites because they historically have been more vulnerable and all that sort of stuff. So if we look at just generally how the tech stack is set up on an average website, so you've got your domain name, and you would usually partner with a domain name registrar. So there's literally hundreds and hundreds of them here in Australia, your Melbourne ITs or your TPPs or your net registries or your crazy domains or whatever, right? That is your domain. That domain usually points to a thing called a DNS. And you think about this, this is like a map file. Basically, it allows you to map out where all the stuff in your website lives. Okay, so you've got these things called name servers, and this is an example, ns1.5x5.com.au, ns2.5x5.com.au. Okay, we're going to get into a really cool free tool that allows you to add this layer of protection to your site. So this is where your website's living here in this hosting environment. You've got a thing called an A record and a WW record, right? The idea here, or the principle here, is to block these threats at this level, at a DNS level, before they even make it through to your website, before they're able to poke and probe your website. So really, this is where this level of protection comes in from a Cloudflare perspective. And I'm trying not to get too into the weeds in terms of technical details, but simplistic diagram in terms of how we can go and block a whole bunch of threats before they even get through to your site. Did I explain that okay, Tammy?
You did that really well. I know it is something that is super complex and complicated to understand, and just to have it in a simplified diagram, it's a great way to
Unless
start.
you're an IT professional, they're the ones that love this sort of stuff. The average business owner, hopefully that explanation was okay. So we got these amazing DNS tools, and the one that we use is called Cloudflare, and they just give away this insane amount of value for free. Literally, the free version out of the box just gives you this whole bunch of functionality. Can you explain that functionality, Tammy?
So what Cloudflare is doing is it's a global network, and it's configured to stop specific traffic from getting to your site. So bot traffic, attacks on your personal information, obviously sitting in that DNS level, stopping the bots sort of getting into your data. From a performance level as well, it is there to speed up your website. So it's optimizing your content and your images just for fast delivery to the end users based on their specific location as well.
Let me give you an example of this. This is just another dummy Cloudflare account. And you'll actually see it gives you a bunch of analytics. In this instance, this is just a super low traffic domain that we've got set up. It's just a little redirector. And you can see the number of requests that come through. Caching. A definition of caching would be a mirrored copy of either your site or some information, either an image or a script or whatever, that exists in lots of multiple locations. So this system's smart enough to basically keep lots of copies of stuff around the world. And if someone visits your site from the US, it makes sense to go and grab the information from the US because it's a much quicker response time. You got a more localized response, and the information is served up quicker. It also builds redundancy in there as well. So it's pretty cool in terms of just like how the system actually works. So this is then going into a little bit more detail about what a DNS looks like. And this is like your map file. This is where where we've got a www record set up. There's no email that's attached to this, so the MX record is not active. But really what we need to look here is this proxied, right? So all traffic is proxied through Cloudflare, which basically means they handle all requests. This system is handling all the traffic, okay? So the benefits of doing that then allow us to do stuff like encrypting that information, okay? So that encryption is done through typically an SSL certificate. And you can see here in this instance, it's set up as full strict, where they actually provide the SSL certificate. See, can you see this little padlock up on my browser bar? It's saying the connection is secure and the certificate is valid. And that's where typically you would get this prefix of HTTPS up in the browser bar. So essentially what it's doing is encrypting that connection between the browser and the origin server. So you can't get these man-in-the-middle attacks and interceptions and all that sort of stuff. So out of the box, they will give you a free SSL certificate. So these are the edge certificates that we've set up through the system. You can force HTTPS. So sometimes in WordPress, it can get a little knickers in a knot and not everything is secure. From a domain level, you can make sure that that little padlock exists on every single page, file, image, script in your website. So that's where by one click of the button, you can do that. There's a whole bunch of other sort of configuration options that I won't get into. Oh, automatic HTTPS rewrites as well. So that's where it will automatically change that HTTP to a HTTPS, which means secure. So literally, it's just like once it's configured, it's like check, 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 check. There's this cool thing in and around speed optimization. Obviously, we want to provide a really good user experience in and around how quick the site is. And what this tool allows us to do is out of the box, like really just speed things up. So this is where this minify means like compressing, squeezing all these scripts and images and all that sort of stuff. So JavaScript, CSS, HTML, it will automatically minimize all that stuff. And then it also has this other tool called Brotli, which will help from a page load time perspective. Brotli is actually an algorithm that Google pioneered. So that's inbuilt and it's literally just like click of a box, it's done. And you see, like if you do it before and after, it's pretty profound in terms of the impact that it can have. So as I said, like it's all free straight out of the box. Then you can upgrade, assuming you get big volumes of traffic or you want more advanced functionality. This is the scrape shield. So this is where you can do stuff like hot link protection, where maybe like someone on a different website is like trying to link logo or something from your site. You can block all that sort of stuff. There's a ton of detail in here. Tammy, would you add anything else into Cloudflare in terms of how it makes life easier?
Well, I think a lot of people who have their own email and their own websites don't really like to even touch their DNS at all. And what Cloudflare does is it's a really nice platform that makes it understandable for everyone to be able to dig into their own DNS and manage it themselves. I know a lot of companies will just rely on their IT for it, and this brings it to the end user.
So that's that. Now we get into housekeeping, and I sort of touched on this at the start of the chat. What should a good, responsible website owner be doing, Tammy, on a regular basis?
So as I've been part of the support sort of division of Fiberfile for such a long time, these are the things that we do as part of our maintenance, and it is super important to make sure that you are on top of these things from a month-to-month basis. So one of them is making sure that your WordPress core, so WordPress core is the software that your website is running on, making sure that that software is always up to date. And along with that, your plugins, so plugins, little add-ons to your site that help it to function the way you want it to function, making sure that those are also reviewed on a regular basis. So make sure that you're actually using them, that they aren't some in there that are problematic, and then sort of making sure that those are up to date as well. So keeping them all updated and secured. And then daily backups as well. If you're not backing up your site daily, you should be. You never know what's going to happen. And just making sure that you have that backup. And then if you need to roll back at any stage, things happen out there, things break, plugins change. So it's important to have that option to be able to roll back. And the other one is user roles. And it's something that you probably don't think about too often. Is it limit who has access to your stuff? I think what we do is we forget who's got access to things. We go, oh, this guy needs to work on it. It's important to audit this on a regular basis and just make sure that you know who's got access to your website, your hosting, any tools that connect to your website as well, making sure that you know who you've given access to and audit that on a regular basis.
That's spot on. Yeah, and out of the box, like WordPress also, so that's like more from an access perspective, but also just like if someone does have access, you know, us as a webmaster, right? We've got administrator access. We need that to be able to, you know, build out new functionality and make changes to the site. If someone's literally just posting blogs though, like they should be set up as an editor role, which limits the amount of stuff that they can do through that. So it's, I think you know, it's probably more of an underutilized feature within WordPress in terms of roles and what people can physically do on a day-to-day basis. You know, you don't want maybe an editor to be going in there and adding or removing plugins or bolting in stuff that maybe shouldn't be there, right? So that's an example of that. This is another big thing, and you know, by default, you've seen a lot of the challenges that have been having out there in the world. Multi-factor authentication. Talk us through this, Tam.
So basically what multi-factor authentication is it's set up on your website or whatever tool you're using to be able to get you to approve a login. It can be one step or two step or three step, depending on how much security you need, and super important on tools that you need to make sure that people aren't accessing. And if there is a hack, or if somebody does access your account or login, that there's a fail-safe sort of step back, be able to approve whether you're going to access it. So how that's done is through a text message to yourself to say, hey, we noticed a login. Is this you? You get the code, you put it in. And there are multiple tools around to be able to do this.
Yep. I suggested one. This is, if you literally just search on Google Authenticator WordPress plugin, you'll find this one here. It's super lightweight and works a treat. And you can see this is the essentially interface that you get. So username, password, and then through the Authenticator app, or I'm using a password management system called a LastPass. And what I can do is essentially this TOTP, same principle as using your Google Authenticator app. I can paste that straight in, and that gives me access. So yeah, that we're into the WordPress administrator panel there. So super easy. Like I literally set that up in 30 seconds flat. It can bolt in. I'm sure everyone's got Google Authenticator already on their phone. So yeah, that just makes life a whole bunch more secure, because typically we see a lot of passwords, don't we, Tammy? And not all these passwords are as secure as they need to be. And the interesting thing is, by even doing that, by default, you've got 3-factor authentication set up, because if you think about it, if the authentication app is on your phone, then typically your phone is using a layer authentication as well through the Face ID or your PIN code or whatever, right? So you've actually got 3 layers of authentication in there, which definitely helps from a security perspective. So we're coming up to time here, Tammy. We've covered a bit of distance.
Just a few things that I think everyone out there should be sort of using as a best practice. Reconcile your users of everything on a regular basis. You don't think about it for 3 months and somebody's left the company. It's important to be able to know who has had access, and have a plan to actually get to remove their access as they leave, so that you don't have 5 years down the line, you've got a whole lot of people accessing your stuff that you don't want to access it. Number 2 is update your passwords on a regular basis. And I'm not talking about once a week, but make sure you are updating it regularly enough and not using something generic. Best way to keep track of that, though, is, as John mentioned earlier, through a password management tool like LastPass or OnePass. You save it in there and it updates it when you're updated. So they're super user-friendly and a great tool to use to be able to keep track of that, because we know keeping track of passwords is an absolute nightmare. And number 3 is install plugins from reputable vendors. So this is a difficult one as well. There are a lot of developers out there. WordPress is an open source system. So make sure when you are requesting or having plugins installed on your website, make sure that you know who it's from. Make sure that you know that it's a reputable dealer. Check searches for it. WP Engine has a list of verified users or verified plugins. So if somebody asks us to install a plugin, we'll go onto that list and go, this is actually, we can't do it because WP Engine won't let us do it because it's not verified. So we do have that fail-safe in place. But if you're not through WP Engine for your hosting, just make sure you are staying on top of that as well.
Yeah. And away of that, like the social proof in this is like, how many active installations does it have active? This is the one that I recommended. This one is also a good one that WP Engine recommend that. This one here, only 100 plus active installations. Like I would probably go for one of these two, just based on sheer volume and social proof, right? So that's where you can understand that. And you can see the last update, it was tested with 4.9. We're up to like 6.1.1, right? So there's a lot of iterations in between there. So you can see someone's dropped off and it's no longer supported or updated or whatever. So
and staying on top of it on a regular basis, just because things do change and plugin developers change. So it might be verified and approved 1 month, and 3 months down the line, it's not, because it hasn't been updated. So just stay on top of that as well.
Tammy, you have been most informative, helpful, wonderful. I appreciate all you do. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us today. And if anyone wants, we'll follow up with a digital strategy scorecard. This is giving you a bit of a benchmark in terms of how your digital presence stacks up. That's an online tool that we've got as well. Thank you for joining us today, and we will see you next time.